In our last session, we talked about how God is the source of generosity, and we thought about how we have responded to His generosity with regard to His common grace for all people and His saving grace for His people. In today's session, we're going to be talking about the discipline of generosity and how handling God's money God's way is an important part of our Christian discipleship. Now, to get started, ask yourself this question. Do I truly view myself as a manager of God's resources, and does that affect the way I manage His money? You see, consistent and wise generosity doesn't just happen. It is intentional. It's a lifestyle that God is calling us to, and it is a discipline to improve in. Now, as we talk about the discipline of generosity, I know that discipline is not always seen as a pleasant word, but it is a good and godly and biblical word. We know that salvation cost Jesus everything and it cost us nothing. Though salvation cost us nothing, discipleship does cost us everything. And honoring God with your finances is an important aspect of your discipleship. In fact, listen to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11, where the writer says, "For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." As you are disciplined in growing more spiritually mature, it can be uncomfortable at times. But remember, comfortable Christianity is not biblical Christianity. Therefore, if there's any comfort at all, we want to get comfortable with being uncomfortable for the purpose of growing in godliness. In fact, listen to John Maxwell, who is an international leadership coach and a former pastor. He is quoted as saying that small disciplines repeated with consistency every day lead to great achievements gained slowly over time. You may not be great with managing God's money right now and being generous, but small, wise decisions in the right direction can lead to tremendous growth and results and impact over time. The word discipline is in our identity as Christians because we are called disciples of Jesus, and discipline is to be a great blessing in our lives as we pattern our lives after Christ and His character of generosity. Therefore, let's get very practical and grow in the discipline of how to manage God's money God's way in order to grow in the godliness of generosity. Now, before we begin, I want to strongly recommend you check out the following website, RamseySolutions.com, as your one-stop shop for personal biblical finances. These resources have not only been a tremendous blessing and helpful to our family to get us into a healthy place financially and for us to give generously over the years, but more importantly, learning how to handle God's money God's way. Now, the following are some biblical principles and steps to get you in the right direction. These are called the 7 baby steps. Step number 1 is to save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. Now, this is just a starter to get you started and start growing in your savings muscles and put a small cushion between you and the unexpected expenses of life. Step number 2 is to pay off all debt except your house. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 7 says that the rich rules over the poor and the borrower is slave to the lender. Debt is not explicitly mentioned as a sin, but the Bible never speaks positively about debt. So make a budget. Tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Live on less than you make. And here's an important lesson at this point. Pick your pain. Pick your pain. You will either experience the pain of discipline now, or you will experience the pain of regret later. And there's a lot of people that you and I know who don't discipline themselves now with regard to time management or their health or money or family or whatever it might be, or their work. And therefore they experience the pain of regret later because their life is not in a place where they would hoped it would have been. Step number 3, save 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in your emergency fund. You see, the Bible teaches the principle of saving in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6 through 8, where the writer says, "Go to the ant, O sluggard, and consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest." Meaning that during the summer, you're saving for the winter when there's not as much. This teaches, and other passages teach, about the principle of saving. So, after you've been intense about paying off all debt except for your house, now take that same surplus that you were throwing at your debt and now put it towards your emergency fund, which again is for emergencies. Finding a new shirt at the mall or a new piece of furniture or some new trending product online is not an emergency. You just got freedom from debt, so don't reshackle yourself back to it. Step number 4 is to invest 15% of your household income into retirement. Jesus himself teaches about the importance of investing in the parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 through 30, which I encourage you to study on your own time. Now think about this. If you're still working at age 67, it should be because you want to, not because you have to. Unless you die early or the rapture happens, you will get old, and you need to have a plan. It's been said that the greatest time to plant an apple tree is 20 years ago, and the next best time is to plant today. Step number 5 is to save for your kids' college fund. If you have kids, start investing for them today so you don't get hit with student loans and carry those around for years, or worse, decades, which is a common thing. Now, if you don't have kids, then you can jump right to step number 6, which is to pay off your home early. Your mortgage is the last major obstacle between you and total personal financial freedom. Can you just imagine what you could do if you had no monthly house payment? Which this now brings us to the final step, step number 7, which is to continue to build wealth and to give. Can you imagine a life with no debt at all? You don't owe anybody anything. Can you imagine how much peace you would have, no longer living paycheck to paycheck? Do you get emotional just thinking about what true financial freedom would be like? Here's another phrase for you to think about. Live like no one else today, so that way later you can live and give like no one else. Live like no one else today, meaning that you are disciplined with a plan. There's a lot of people in the world who are not disciplined and have no plan. So that way later you can live and give like nobody else. Now, you're probably saying at this point, I need help with this. I need more information, more resources. How do I do this? And that's okay. For more resources on making a zero-based budget, paying off debt, getting in touch with an investment professional, and learning how to handle God's money God's way, and so much more, go to RamseySolutions.com to get started. Now, as we talk about generosity, remember Proverbs chapter 3, verse 9, where the writer says to honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruits of all your produce. You see, this and many other passages teach that no matter what step you're on, no matter what your financial life looks like, that generosity and giving as unto the Lord is to be a lifestyle, an act of worship in all steps, in all stages of life. So today, we talked about the discipline of generosity, and we asked the question, do I truly view myself as a manager of God's resources, and does that affect the way that I manage His money? In our next session together, we're going to be talking about the blessing of generosity, focusing on the words of Jesus in Acts chapter 20, verse 35, where Jesus says, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And until then, God bless you. I'm praying for you and I'm cheering you on as we follow Jesus together.